We've come now to our weekly feature, Movie Spotlight, reviewing some of the latest releases at the Korean box office and online. And we have our panel of film critics who help us do that each week. This week, we have in the studio with us first, Jason Bechervaise. Hello, Jason.
Hello, Jung.
And we also have Marc Raymond here with us as well. Marc, hello. It's great to see you.
Great to see you.
Okay, so we have one international and one local movie to review this week. Let's start with our international release, which is a Hollywood action-adventure comedy called The Lost City, simply called Lost City in Korean. It stars Sandra Bullock, Channing Tatum, and Daniel Radcliffe. So, Marc, can you tell us more about this film?
Yeah, it's a kind of an old-style kind of action-adventure romance kind of movie. Reminds you a lot of like these 1980s kind of movies. Bullock stars as this romance writer who also was married to this archaeologist who had passed away earlier before the movie begins. So she's still grieving that loss. And she goes on this book tour with her for her new release with basically the cover model of her books, who's played by Channing Tatum. He's basically like a Fabio kind of style guy. And they... And Daniel Radcliffe plays this rich man who is looking for this lost treasure, as people do in these type of movies, and decides to kidnap her. And because he thinks, because of her background with her archaeologist husband, that she might be able to solve this language, translate this language and find where this treasure is located. And then when this happens, the Channing Tatum character decides to try to save her and become kind of the hero of the books that he had only just posed for. And that's basically the plot. The plot kind of goes from there.
Sure, I already heard a lot of sighing over on this side.
I'm
Jason,
sorry.
It is a big Hollywood release. It isn't a franchise film, though. Having said that, there are a lot of familiar elements, as Marc has referenced. Very Romancing the Stone, a little bit of Indiana Jones. There was also another recent film, Jungle Cruise. That sounds familiar. So
You name it. It's it'll remind you of many films. Jewel of the Nile is another one. National Treasure, even Kingsman, believe it or not. It's a bit goofy, and it has fun moments. I won't deny that. But I just found it a drag. It's a bit sloppy. The effects aren't really great.
No.
And I mean, you can watch a dumb movie, but as long as it's entertaining, it's worth 2 hours of your time. You can forgive its shortcomings. I'm not sure that was the case here. It was not particularly compelling. The two leads were okay, but kind of got annoying towards the end. And Brad Pitt's performance was,
he appears late in the film, right?
Yes, he does. But most kind of, in terms of his screen presence, you see it towards the beginning of the film, actually. And he's a very eccentric character. And overall, I didn't particularly like it. It was just, it was stupid, dumb, and not very interesting, and very, very derivative.
Right, okay. So Jason couldn't forgive it for its shortcomings. What about you, Marc?
Yeah, I mostly agree. I mean, the first half of the movie's okay, and like the two stars have good chemistry, and they're movie stars for a reason. So the movie kind of gets by on their charisma for about half of the movie, but it can't really go the full 2 hours. Eventually, just the cliches pile up in it. And also, it tries to get a bit sentimental and serious, and that doesn't work at all because it's not that type of movie. It's too silly to really take seriously at all. And as Jason mentioned, the look of the film is a big problem for me too. Like it just looks very cheap, like cheap CGI, and doesn't have any of the real like feel of those like 80s or like those kind of movies. They just because they do more practical effects. We're getting to the point now where these modern Hollywood CGI movies look like Hollywood movies of the 50s with rear projection and stuff like that. They look kind of like like the style is regressing in a way. So yeah,
absolutely agree. Romancing the Stone is a great film. You know, it's shot on location, and it's just a lot of fun. You know, Michael Douglas is just terrific. It's just this film just doesn't have that.
Right.
It doesn't. It tries to have that charisma, but it just doesn't work. And the effects are sloppy.
Okay, so a bit of a damp squib. So let's move on then to our second film. With the COVID-19 situation improving, the local film industry is getting back into full swing as well. And a number of commercial Korean films are hitting cinemas over the next few weeks. This week we have Anchor, also titled Anchor in Korean. It stars Chun Woo-hee and it was released on Wednesday. Jason, can you take it away for us on this one?
Yeah, so we're actually getting some studio films finally, so commercial releases coming out of the local film industry. Very much at the center of this week's film is, like you said, Chae-hoo-hee. She's quite busy at the moment. She's also in I Want to See Your Parents' Face, that's released next week. She was in films such as Bong Joon-ho's Mother. Her breakthrough performance, though, was in Hangong-ju. She plays a respected anchor at a broadcasting station. She presents the 9 p.m. kind of flagship news show. And just before she goes on air one evening, someone phones into the office, and she takes the phone call, and it's a mysterious caller claiming that she'll be killed by someone, and asks the anchor to cover the story. So she then carries on with the news, but it's bothering her, and she's talking to her rather overbearing mother, who is also in the business as well, and she tells her to go and investigate, and that's what she does. And she goes to the home, this kind of sub-basement apartment that you see also in Parasite, and she discovers two bodies, the young girl and the mother. So and then she calls the police, and that's all you really need to know. A lot happens after that, but I don't want to give away any spoilers. It's directed by Jung Ji-yeon. An example, and this is really interesting, that this is a genre film helmed by a female director. Sadly, that's not been very common until more recently. An example is Hong Hee-jung's Voice of Silence. This particular director has also worked as an actress, and Anchor also stars Shin Ha-kyun, along with Hye-young, Hye-young, and Park Ji-yeon.
Okay, so Mark, I saw the trailer and it seemed to be bordering between psychological horror, a psychological thriller, and horror, actually, with the main protagonist literally being able to see some ghosts in it seems. What do you make of the film?
Yeah, it's kind of a genre mixing a lot of these kind of horror with psychological thriller, these kind of movies, and it's referencing a lot of other movies. It's very, like, consciously, kind of like, I mean, you might even call it like almost like a pastiche. It's kind of like clearly referencing these other films, while also trying to maintain its own style.
Right, what kind of films?
Movies from like Hitchcock movies and all, like, you know, which of course a lot of thrillers borrow from, so it's not unique in that sense, but also like movies like Silence of the Lambs, these kind of, like, you know, movies that are in this horror thriller kind of like in between, like, you know, that you can qualify either way. And it's a good genre for young directors to kind of get into, because you can be very stylish and work it out. My disappointment was it just felt kind of cliched a lot of times, and there was, like, you know, these kind of jump scares and these kind of things. It just didn't really feel like it all kind of came together, even though the cast is very good. And you know, it's an enjoyable movie. I think it's an interesting, when you have these type of movies, it might be a benefit if you haven't seen a lot of them. Therefore, it might feel a little fresher. I mean, probably probably something similar with The Lost City too, to be honest. If you've never seen those movies from the 80s, that movie will feel fresher than it actually is, since it's at least not a franchise movie. And I think this movie's trying to do something similar, which is, you know, work within this thriller genre, and try to sort of build a style out of it. I just don't think it totally works as, like, you know, even though it, you know, shows some promise, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it definitely shows some promise. It deals with difficulties women face in the workplace. She's surrounded by men, and the competition is very fierce, especially as a female anchor. And I liked how the director kind of incorporated genre into that. It does rely quite heavily on some of these references, particularly Hitchcock. I'm not going to name the film because it will reveal a spoiler. And the story itself I'm not sure the script. It seems a bit flawed to me, but without going into the kind of the details of the narrative. But that being said, the performances are good. There is promise there. I did enjoy it. I like the way it started. I'd like to see it again. I wouldn't be surprised to see, some genre festivals picking this film up.
So not without flaws, but enjoyable and perhaps relying a bit too much on its influences, but promising nonetheless. Now, as we stated earlier, we have more Korean commercial titles finally coming out over the next couple of months. This comes as social distancing rules have been eased. Business hour curfews in cinemas were lifted this week, and it was revealed today that food and drink will also be allowed from next week as well.
Popcorn!
Yes, so we can indeed start to munch down on some popcorn once again. So, Marc, are we seeing the Korean film industry coming back to life again?
Well, we'll see how these films end up doing, but certainly we're going to get a lot more big releases coming up, and clearly they're planning on the fact that the COVID regulations are, as you mentioned, lightening, and that they're going to stay that way, and that there's going to be an ability to get out a lot of these films a lot of films that have been basically been on a kind of holding pattern, or like the studios are worried about releasing, and it looks like we're going to get a lot of those movies in the next few months. Now, how they'll do, of course, that remains to be seen, I think. But
I'm hoping that there's a real appetite for people to get back into the cinema. I've been going to the cinema throughout the pandemic, but I really want to get back to a theatre which is full. Right. I really want that kind of collective atmosphere. We do have a number of films. We've got The Roundup. This is the Outlaw sequel starring Ma Dong-seok. That's out in May. We've got the Cannes films as well, Park Chan-wook's Decision to Leave and Creator's Broker as well. They're both coming, I believe, in June. And then we actually have a tentpole. So Kim Ha-min's Hansan. This is part of the Roaring Currents kind of trilogy. And that film remains the most successful Korean film ever, with 17 million admissions. And we've got quite a few Hollywood films too. We've got Doctor Strange coming, I think, next week. And a film I'm really excited about, Top Gun Maverick. For me, that is the quintessential popcorn movie.
Speaking of the 1980s. Right?
Yeah. So, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, touch wood, no more variants, that people come back to the cinemas in bigger numbers.
Yes, fingers crossed, but it seems like there's much to look forward to in the next few months. Okay, that's where we'll wrap it up for this week's Movie Spotlight. Jason, Marc, thank you as always for coming in, and we'll see you again next time.
Take care.
Thank you.